What have you thought about this tournament so far?
I think it's been a mild success. I wouldn't say like home run or anything like that, but that's just because it's in its infancy stage. Like this is the first year of it. I
Hmm.
think to expect something to be just this huge success right off the bat is a little unrealistic. There was going to always be some tweaks that are needed. More than anything, I think it gets people caring about late November basketball instead of, oh well, I don't even pay attention to the NBA until the All-Star break, or I don't pay attention to the NBA until Christmas Day. That should be when the season starts. You kind of hear that a lot, especially from college basketball fans, that
Yeah,
um, only they feel like these early months are, and not valuable to the regular season. We get teams caring a lot more, we get players caring a lot more, but more importantly, fans.
exactly. I mean, it's not going to sustain or survive past this year if there's no interest on the fan side. Straight up, just how many people were tuning in, and more specifically, how many people tuned in relative to a similar time period last year when there was no in-season tournament. NBA Communications posted this, I believe, earlier today. The numbers reflect basically what you said, Shane. You're not going to see anything drastic like it's double the engagement or double the views or anything like that compared to last year, but you will see some increases. Local TV, the average audience for group play was about 20% up from last November's average. So attendance was the highest average attendance on record for November. 18,206 was the average. Very impressive stuff. So, like you said, November is not typically a time of the year where you're going to have the
Yeah.
most engagement. So it's a little bit of a lower bar, but still, if it's the best November in history, I mean, you're doing something right with this tournament.
Me, what is the downside? I've yet to hear one single reputable piece of criticism that's like, you know, explain why we shouldn't do this.
Right.
Yeah, if you give me a good reason why, I could see like people saying, "Oh, extra wear and tear in people's body." Well, that's not the case because it's the same amount of games, right?
Mm-hmm. Unless
Or
you're talking about the final, then you have one extra game. But to this point, there have been
exactly.
no extra games played.
So I don't really see the downside. I mean, if you want to get nitpicky, it is that it kind of incentivizes coaches to overplay their stars in games that they otherwise wouldn't because of the point differential.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have any takes on that. I understand that case. You don't want Tatum playing 48 minutes in a
Yeah,
game that he
for
doesn't
sure.
need to
Of
play.
course.
But at the end of the day, once December or whatever 8th or 9th is over with, like that won't be the case anymore. Like
Yeah.
I think these guys can suck it up for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So
2 weeks. It's a few games. It's
yeah,
not like it's going to create that much more wear and tear on your body. So, I mean, the payoff, I think, is worth a few extra minutes per game. It's
yeah,
not going to be a huge factor. We got to talk about social media. That's another major factor of engagement for the NBA. Best November ever for social media in the NBA space. 3.9 billion video views in that
yeah.
regard. And then finally, League Pass, which at times is the bane of our existence, just depending on where you watch it at. But despite that, uh, group play nights on League Pass were up 25% versus a comparable time period in November of last year. So across the board, marginal increases. And then you look at that one game on national TV, big time game when you have a lot of history and key matchups involved. That was up almost the double the same time period of
Hmm.
last year. So my general takeaways from the in-season tournament so far, well received. Most people on Twitter that I see, they start talking about it. They say, "Hey, I wasn't a fan in the beginning. I'll admit I had skepticism, uh, but I've come to enjoy it. I think it's a good idea." That's generally what I've been seeing on social media from most people that talk about
Hmm.
it. The media coverage has been consistent, like throughout the week. In between, they say, "Hey, this Friday we have two more games in group play coming up. You know, these two teams in Group A of the West and Group B of the East." Um, just keeping fans updated as far as like what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
Now, of course, keeping track of the standings, that's something that I think needs to be addressed going forward, and we'll talk about that when we get to the point differential section. But lots of excitement, lots of buzz, social media, on TV. Everybody seems to be excited about these matchups coming up, especially when there is added incentive like, hey, it's the Kings. We've lost whatever it was, like 10 of the last 11 regular season meetings, something like that against the Warriors. Like, we really want to get this game. Things like that will drive engagement up. It's kind of like a multiplier effect. When you have the in-season tournament itself, which is already going to generate more excitement, then you have history between these teams added on top. It's just going to make it even more of a attractive product.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely well received across the league. Keeping games on the same nights every week, I think that's another point, another win. I think it would be a disaster if the games were changing every week, like Monday,
Yeah.
Wednesday, Tuesday, Friday. Like, people would be so confused if
Mm-hmm.
they're not already confused now. So
And
that's another good
thankfully,
for me.
one of those days is not the weekend because people,
Yeah,
let's be honest, like you and I are sickos. We watch basketball on the weekend, but
hmm
like other people are hanging out with their family, right?
exactly.
So
It's not their priority. They'll be watching
yeah.
college football, like you mentioned before. It's a big competitor around this time period. So yeah, I mean, I think overall we're in agreement there, Shane. Really good performance overall in the in-season tournament. It's a good stepping stone. It's a good foundation to lay and
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, this is a good product. It can be better, but for the first year, it's like we're talking about a rookie that comes into the league and they have good performances, a little bit up and down, but you see the flashes. That's basically what you want to see from a first year guy. He
Mm-hmm.
understands the general schemes of the league. He's getting better. He's showing flash. He's showing potential. From there, second, third, fourth, that's where we really want to see the big jumps. But I think that's going to come in time once people start to understand, like, this time of the year is going to be the in-season tournament. We come to expect it. We know what's going to be happening. It's going to be even better going forward.
Yeah. I don't really have any other points on that. I think um, the numbers speak for themselves on engagement. It's been a huge win, or it's been a moderately big win. I think
Yeah.
it would be even
Yeah.
greater once the average fan actually cares to know all the ins and outs of it, right?
Mhm.
But that's what happens when you get the first year of something.
Yep.
It's a big learning curve. So next year or the year after, 2025, like then I think they'll be cooking.
Big time. And we can't talk about in-season tournament without talking about one big part of it that makes it stand out even more for regular season games, and that is the courts. So if we're going to talk about the courts here, I think it's a mixed bag. Just one of my
Yeah.
first initial impressions of this. I kind of separated the courts into three categories. So my first category are the courts that were tough on the eyes, that were just like, wow, there's a lot going on here. Indiana, that's just the first one that comes to mind here for me. The Heat court, the Bulls court, a sea of red. It's like just a big
Yeah.
hot lava pit or something. Like, the players are running on. It's just a lot of red, man. A lot of red that's gonna be tough on the eyes. The Knicks court, you look at center court where they have the New York kind of spelled out there, and it's almost like a three-dimensional effect. They have like different fonts going different colors in the middle. That's a lot. Plus, it's orange. Uh, so those four courts for me, not really going to say they're really great or really bad. They're just kind of in your face. You really notice them a lot, and it makes the game stand out even more, for better or worse. My second category are the real plain Jane boring courts that I think we can do better. I think of Toronto's court. I think of Brooklyn's court. I think of Memphis's court, the Mavericks court, and the Kings court to an extent.
Hmm.
What stands out to you? I mean, I don't know if you have them up in front of you, but
I do.
is there
Yeah.
like a common theme you notice with all those courts that I mentioned?
I mean, it's just really loud. In terms of like the ones that are red, as you said.
Yeah.
When you have guys like Zach Lowe even saying that it takes them to the third quarter to really kind of forget about it, that's a problem,
Yeah.
right? Because you can imagine just the average, like, I don't know, 20-year-old fan is probably going to be just going crazy about it and not really focusing on the basketball itself. But then again, I mean, I'm kind of old school when it comes to this stuff. Like just get over it. Like, adjust. I like new things. Like it doesn't take like this insane brain power to just forget that it or just to acknowledge that it's a different court and to continue playing.
Mhm.
Like, I'm watching the Jazz. I'm watching like the Jazz Suns. Like, yes, it's a purple court, but I mean, it looks cool to my eyes at least,
Mhm.
and it's still at the end of the day Kevin Durant pulling up for three, right?
Yep.
Like I
Those
don't know. I
games.
mean, I don't really get the whole like backlash against them. Um, we're talking about the NBA, and that's the big thing. Like it goes back to the other point. Like yeah, some might be hideous. Maybe 20% of them might be hideous, but the other ones are pretty cool. I really like Utah. I love it.
Me too.
I was watching, that Suns and Jazz game I was talking about. Like I think it was on a
Mhm.
Friday night,
Yep.
and it came in on the wire, and it looks like a cool setting, versus just the typical hardwood. But I will
Yep.
say some teams keep it simple, and it is great. Like I think was it Minnesota, or did I have that wrong? Is Minnesota's
Minnesota's the light blue court.
that is
Yep.
great. That's the
Yep.
best. That's the
Mhm.
best one. And really, I like kind of how simple. I hate the logo of Milwaukee. I don't like that Wisconsin thing. I just
Yep.
want them to have the deer head in the middle.
Yep.
But I love the color.
Yeah.
It's resembles hardwood. Like it's not a little bit lighter, but it's not too crazy. So
Yes.
it's. I think teams though, like Boston. I don't really like that shade of green, but we're just getting into
Wow.
colors and all that,
Yeah. It's
variants and
it's
stuff
it,
like
it's
that. But
subjective. Yeah.
yeah,
It's definitely subjective. I kind of think of it like you have those teams, like you mentioned, that are really bright, really in your face. Those are a little bit over the top. Then you have some of the ones I mentioned before, like Memphis, Toronto, Brooklyn, where like
hmm
they're 90% like black or gray. Where I'm like, okay, I get it simple, like it's not too in your face, but like, can we do a little bit better than gray?
yeah,
Like all gray, all black, especially a team like Toronto. I know they have their Drake influence where you're going to have some like black and gold. Like maybe you can
hmm
incorporate that a little bit more instead of just like a really dark gray and then a really light gray. Like something to freshen up a little
yeah,
bit. Memphis, same thing. I think you can do a little bit better than like gray, like a light gray and
hmm
a medium gray. But then you have
I
those
will,
teams like you mentioned before, like they're in the middle, like the Jazz court, where it's
yeah,
like, okay, it's a different color, but it's a softer color. Like purple isn't orange or red or bright blue. It's more of a subtle kind of
yeah,
like calming, gentle color. Like those courts that are they're distinctive, but they're not over the top. Those are the best
hmm
courts, like Minnesota, Utah. We could talk about ATL as another one. Um, I will say though, the Pelicans court, I know it's a lot. Like you have that lime green in the middle, and then you have the purple around that. It is a lot, but I mean, as far as like trying to capture the essence of New Orleans, like I think that's as probably as good as you can get with the
yeah.
Mardi Gras type of theme. So I like that one too. So it's kind of like a third or like too much, a third or not enough, and a third are just right. That's just kind of
I'll,
how I view it.
yeah, I'll tell you one thing. I know I was just thinking of a team that was ahead of the curve here, a team that was way before its time. You know what these courts remind me of? That Miami Heat three shade gradient vice that they tried in 2021.
Yep, they were
Like,
ahead of the curve for
but
sure.
here's the thing: like, if you want to talk about a team that dropped the ball, it's Miami, completely ditching Vice.
Yeah,
Like
that was a
total.
huge
I
one.
mean, it's this is a side tangent, but I've tweeted it at least 5 times in the last few years. But like, that's such a horrible decision to
It
go away
was.
from that,
It was.
and they could have utilized it here for sure.
Oh yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. That's one of the biggest L's if we're going to be talking about courts or jerseys over the past 3 years. They have to be the team that loses out big time. And this is a Heat fan talking. I
Yeah.
can't lie. They went from the top to probably bottom five in terms of jerseys, which is a real shame, man. They had it in the bag. They had it like in their grasp and they let it go. So that's definitely a shame. But that's the courts. That's just a little bit of something I wanted to talk about here in terms of like best and worst. But kind of back on a more serious note here, the competitiveness of the games themselves. Now, I don't have specific stats to back this up. I think I've seen this tweeted or posted on the internet a little bit here. I'm pretty sure that in-season tournament games, the margin of victory compared to regular season games over the same time period, it is shorter. It's lower. It's more competitive, less blowouts. The one the one exception here is it goes back to what we just talked about here, the point differential thing. The final night of group play on Tuesday, it was the exception. You had some teams trying to run up the score because they were trying to get their point differential higher. Knicks blew out the Hornets 115-91. That wasn't close. The Celtics destroyed the Bulls 124-97. That was a near 30-point win
Yeah.
for them. The Cavs blew out the Hawks 128-105. That's a 23-point win. But I mean, that's basketball, that's sports. You're going to have
Exactly. And you
better
just mentioned,
uncompetitive.
yeah, you to your point, Aaron, you just mentioned like Boston and Chicago. Like Chicago is bad.
Yeah.
Like
No one's
like
going to
like
have
you know
it.
exactly like that. It doesn't matter what kind of night this was, regular season, but like it doesn't matter. In season tournament, like the Celtics are way better. They shoot better shots. They take better shots. Like that is what it is. But
Yeah. Exactly, man. I mean, you're going to have nights like this, regardless of what's at stake here or what type of part of the season we're in. But I mean, aside from that, I have noticed a more of a competitive nature, more intense atmosphere in these games. Kings Warriors is the prime example. That's kind of like the template you use. It's like if you're just showing a presentation to an executive in the NBA, somebody higher up in that management chain, and you're saying like, okay, I want to really broadcast, I want to show off the success of this tournament. You show them that game, you show them the atmosphere. You could probably find some other games in that period that were very good, like that Jazz Suns game you mentioned before. I was watching
mhm,
that game as well, and those last 5, 6, 7 minutes were fantastic, back
yeah,
and forth, a lot of big baskets there. KD kind of finished that one off uh, for the Suns there, but across the board, I've noticed really competitive basketball. These guys, they want to play in Vegas. They want to have
hmm
that prize. They want to have the distinction of being the first champion of the in-season tournament. They want to have that in their resume. So of course you're going to have guys play harder. The starters are going to play more minutes. It's almost like a halfway point between a regular season matchup and a playoff matchup. I don't think you're going to capture 100% of a playoff atmosphere. You can get pretty close in certain games,
yeah,
but between the court, the uniforms, the atmosphere, the players giving 110%, just about the entire game. That's another reason why, not just for fan engagement, but for the players themselves. If you give the players something else to play for, that's just like they're going to get up for these games. It's not just another day on the calendar to where they kind of roll in there and roll the ball out and do their thing. You're going to get better performances, and that's what college fans try to use against the NBA, saying that college is
yeah,
better because these guys care. But if you take this as a tournament, it's like, all right, it's another case for us
yeah,
NBA fans saying like these guys do care, and when they do care, you're going to get a vastly superior product to college. Which I know you've had your opinions on that
yeah.
in the past, but it's just another tip of the cap, feather in the cap for the in-season tournament, just getting these competitive games. So
Yeah, I think like you said, some are competitive, some aren't. Just comes down to who's in your group, really. So maybe the league, which I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you can help me with this. Are they going to be changing? I'd assume the answer is yes, changing the groups year to year because like they kind of have to, right? Because let's
I
just
would
say
think
a team
so.
gets injured or yeah, free agency decisions. Like you can't keep
Yeah.
these. You got to switch up the groups.
That's my understanding. They said random before it started, so that makes me think that every season you're just going to hit the random button every time
That'd be cool. Yeah.
within the conference, but you'll shuffle it up. That's how
Yeah.
way I think about it.
Um, so then again, like, it just depends on who's good in that given year. You might have a really, really competitive group that every game comes down to the wire, but then you might have other ones where it's like the Nuggets are in the same group with, I don't know, the Spurs, before Wimby gets great, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I understand like the concern there, but it's basketball. You cannot predict blowouts, you cannot predict close games. This is the
Right.
NFL where like you're always kind of within reach. NBA, you can get out on a 25-point lead like it's nothing with how prevalent the three ball is now, right?
Yep. Good
And how
point.
fast the game is. So I don't really care about that component of it, but I think I'm not sure if you want to get in the point differential part now, but I think that's really been a huge ordeal that I kind of didn't expect. Be honest, I don't think you expected going in that the players were going to be thinking about that mid game. or mid
Mhm.
possession, like, oh man, we have to win by 13, we have to win by 20. I did not expect that, but for Jason Tatum and or not Jason Tatum, he was the one against it,
Yeah,
or one of the ones against it. But like for Steph to say that to his team, for forgot what team it was, Devin Booker pulling up
yep,
and banking in a three and
yep.
Memphis. I mean
Mhm.
that's just such a cool part that you never saw that in an NBA game before this year, and that
Yep.
matters. I like that.
I do too. So you mentioned it. Let's go ahead and get into it. I think this is going to be the biggest story here when it comes to the season tournament. So I want to see if you agree with this here. So we saw Tatum's thoughts on this. He believes that it hurts the integrity of the game. It's disrespectful to your opponent to try to run up this score in the last few minutes of the game. Now, I side with Booker. He was asked the same question today, and his response was, "I don't see if both teams are on the same page. We both understand that there's more at stake than this one game tonight. There's I think of it as a game within a game. So there's the game tonight, and then there's the game in the in season standings. So you think of it if you think of it like that, both teams know what's at stake. You don't have one team trying to just roll the ball out and the other team trying to run up the score. They're both on the same playing field doing the same thing. He's like, hey, if this is the way we're going to think about it, we're both on the same page. I don't see how it's disrespectful to anybody to simply play the game to the final buzzer. It keeps a competitive environment going through the entire game. There's no garbage time. There's no part of the game to where the excitement dips. It stays exciting because there's more at stake than just trying to win that one game. And if even if it's a 20-point game, one team is saying like, "Hey, we need a win differential of 25 to get to the next round." The other team is saying like, "We don't want to let them get there, or we
Yeah,
can't let our point differential get too low." So if you think of it like that, it creates even more of a competitive environment because there's more at stake. So I side with him. That I said that multiple times on Twitter. I didn't really understand where Tatum was coming from, stating his concerns about it, saying that it's wrong, it's against the nature of the game and things like that. I'm not on board with that. I think it's perfectly fine to run it that way. But how do you feel
I
about
think
that?
I think the concerns about being too showboaty or being hurting the integrity of the game is absolutely insane. And the reason I think Tatum is insane for that take, and anyone that has a problem with it, is because think about what he's saying: integrity of the game of basketball. Well, when you're playing pickup, Aaron, because I played pickup the other night,
Hmm.
uh, do you let off the gas when you're up 18 points? No, like you play to win the game. You play to defend
Yep.
it. You go all the way through. And your friends that you're playing with, hopefully, unless they're just sore losers, they don't care that you're continuing to play hard
Right.
because you're on the floor, you're healthy enough to play basketball, it's fun. There should be no hard feelings. I don't think when Devin Booker's pulling up in Memphis and banking in a three, he's like hating the Grizzlies, right? Like
Right.
he's just it's the objective of this tournament is to, if you're not going to win your group, which the Suns didn't, it's like, okay, we have to at least clinch ourselves in. We have to clinch the
Yeah.
tiebreaker
The wild
somehow.
card.
Do what
Yeah.
we can, right? So it's just another component, and players are going to have to get over that. It's the same
Yep.
thing about Zion dunking on the Suns last year with 1 second left, and they were up
Yeah.
18 or something. Like, who cares? It's for the fans, and I do think, to answer this question on the screen, I do think that a it is the best tiebreaker moving forward if we're going to get these type of uh, weird situations where like players like Tatum and stuff are angry or whatever. But I will say, when you start hacking Andre Drummond and all that, like when you I don't really like that part of it. I'm kind of
Yeah.
with Billy Donovan. I'm actually with Billy Donovan on that. It's
Yeah.
like, what are we doing here? If that's what we're
Yeah.
going to resort to, then again, you can't legislate that out of the game. You can't tell
Right.
Missoula not to do that.
With the foul. Yeah. But I mean,
So
that's even more. That's not even like an in-season tournament issue. I think that's just like a general like
yeah,
because we saw the league change the rules in terms of when you can do
yeah.
that. You can't do it in the last 2 minutes of
But I'm saying
the
it
quarter.
does look ridiculously silly if you're doing that up
Yeah.
20.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree.
it is a little weird, but maybe we
Mhm.
just have to get used to weird.
Yeah.
So
Is this something else? Like, I mean, there's a lot new. Like, anytime you incorporate something that's new or goes against what has been established in basketball or whatever over a period of time, you're going to have resistance.
Yeah.
That's all this is. Um, so as far as how I feel about the point differential, I don't hate it. I don't think it's disrespecting anybody to do that. However, I do have an idea for another tiebreaker, at least for the
Okay.
second breaker that we could possibly use going forward. And this comes down to teams' record, regular season record, apart from
Oh,
in-season
okay.
tournament record. So, and I posted this because I think what's his name? Hardwood. Um,
Oh,
how did
HP,
it go?
Matt Moore. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt Moore. Yeah. So he threw the question out on Twitter, and then somebody had the response, "How about we go with regular season record?" And I kind of piggybacked off to that, but I had that idea in my mind before I saw that. I think I had that in my mind like yesterday or Tuesday, a couple of days ago. But I basically said regular season record is my preference because number one, it increases the importance of games in between in season tournament days.
Yeah.
So the games are on Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, Saturday. They're even more important. So now instead of getting like peaky games here for in season tournament and then a little bit lower intensity for regular season games, now they all have increased level of importance. And maybe we can increase the competitive level of
Yeah.
all games across the board until the in season tournament's over. Number two, I think it eliminates a little bit of the confusion that can become apparent when you're trying to decipher win differential. So,
Yeah.
you'll be listening to a broadcast and it's like, well, if the Warriors win by 11 or more, then they move on. But if they win by less than 11 and you're trying to do the math, like, okay, plus 20, plus 30, minus 5. Like, okay, some people are good at math, Shane. Like, some people just get it. Other people don't. Like
Yeah.
I asked my mom this when I was visiting my family for Thanksgiving. And I think this is, I don't think it comes down just to point differential, but I asked her, did you watch the in-season tournament games? She said, yes, I have. I have been watching them. I saw the courts. I saw, the jerseys and things like, cool, that's cool. Do you understand what's going on? No, I do not. She did
Yeah.
not understand. Like, I mean, I think she had a general understanding. It's like, okay, you have teams that play each other multiple times and you have different rounds or whatever. But I don't think she really comprehended the idea of win differential and
Mm-hmm.
how that impacts team standings, going against, if there's a tiebreaker. I think that part of it just didn't compute. Now, of course, if she wanted to understand, she could. She can do the math. She
Mm-hmm.
can go on the website, NBA.com, and figure it out. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of these fans that are watching, they're not like
Yeah.
us. They're not
And
going to watch
imagine,
every game.
you're absolutely right. And imagine the people that are there in the stands. I'm sorry, but they're unless you just don't really care, but like you wouldn't be at the game anyway if that was the case. But you're not going to be on your phone, on Twitter,
Yeah,
trying to figure out how much you need to win by, trying to figure out who's ahead in the stand. Like it's a lot.
it is a lot.
It's a lot for us. Imagine it's
Yeah. So for
you know,
them,
yeah,
they just give up. They're just like,
yeah,
I'll watch whoever's playing, but I'm not going to try to
yeah,
figure out who's going to move on and all that stuff.
yeah.
So
And what I was going to say is a potential fix to that is I'm sure they already do it in some cases. A lot of the times now, for transparency, like when I put on a game, I skip the pregame or like I'm zoned out. I'm on Twitter or something, and I just wait till the ball is tipped, so I don't really
yeah.
listen to all the commentary. But I'm
Mhm.
sure they do this. But I think they could do an even better job of every in-season tournament game before tip and all that. Like go through everything, everything that matters,
Oh
everything that
yeah,
doesn't matter. Like kind of lay it out for the viewer. I'm sure
right.
broadcasts do that, especially national television, but I think
Sure.
every broadcast should.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. It can definitely alleviate some of the confusion that's there. But I think
Yeah.
just due to the fact that that the big tiebreaker, is point differential, it's just naturally going to make it complicated for people. So if we do
Yeah.
regular season record, I feel like that can alleviate a lot of that. Now,
Yeah.
Matt's counterpoint to this on Twitter was the fact that teams might have tied regular season records. And if that's the case, we can go to point differential
Yeah.
for another tiebreaker, because he mentioned that this could come into play since we haven't played a ton of games, so the likelihood of ties
Mhm.
has increased. But somebody commented this, and I kind of echoed this. We're not starting in game 5 or 6 to where a lot of teams are going to be tied. I think it's just late enough, especially once we get to the end of group play, that you're not going to have a ton of teams tied to regular season records. We see it
Yeah.
right now. You're going to have the Celtics here. You're going to have the Grizzlies down here. You're going to have the Pistons down here. You're going to have teams in the middle, 10-8,
Hmm.
11-7. Like there could be a few ties. I don't see there being any more than 2 or 3. Like if we're looking at all the
Yeah.
different scenarios. I mean, I haven't done it myself tonight, but if we go back and look at the teams that are tied in the group play, I doubt there's a ton of ties there.
Yeah.
Regular
There's too many
season, right?
scenarios where I think there maybe be one each year, if that.
Yeah, something like
So
that. But if that's the case, then okay, we'll move on to point differential, win
yeah.
differential, and that way we only have to do math once or twice instead of for every scenario to where a team is tied.
Yeah.
So that's where I stand with it. I would like to see it change to this next year. I don't know if they're going to do it. There are merits to win differential. You have the games that are competitive for
Hmm.
longer, like we just talked about. But for the sake of casual fans, for the sake of simplicity, I
Yeah.
do think there's reasons to change it over to regular season record.
I like that idea. I'm not really on Twitter as much during the day, so I didn't see that argument. So it's the first time I'm hearing about that. So I agree with you on that one. I think they should do it for next year. And just make point differential the third tiebreaker, or yeah,
The
I
third,
guess that'd be the third. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, the one thing that I think they could do with that as well is it'd be easy to put a little thing on the screen that says if they tie, Philly gets it because they
yeah,
had like that'd be easy to do versus putting on the screen. Yeah, Philly has to win by 27. Like,
right,
it just I think it'd be easier and cleaner to put it on the broadcast. And that's what we're
yeah,
ultimately caring about is how can the broadcast explain it? Not how we can, but how can the broadcast?
yeah,
So yeah, I agree. I don't know, are we on the section where yeah, we can different changes to the tournament because
yeah.
as we're talking about this, there's one thing that I think I would change.
Yeah, I figured this would be a good time to
Yeah,
transition into this point since we're talking about simplicity, trying to make the game easier for everybody involved. This is another way we can do that. Here's another problem with trying to follow the tournament. If you're not at your computer, you're not at your phone. Let's say you're just having a conversation with friends. Oh, who do you think has the most competitive group? What do you think is the group of death? What do you think is the easiest group? Oh man, I gotta take out my phone. I gotta go see who's in the group. Oh, okay, it's the
yeah,
Suns, the Lakers, the Jazz, whatever. If we change it to divisions, now the problem with this is you'd have it the same every year, and that could create problems. But if we change it to divisions, that way, off the top of your head, Southeast Division, okay, Hawks, Heat, Magic, Wizards, Hornets. Like you just know who's in that group,
yeah,
who's playing each other, instead of having to every time. Like I still haven't memorized who's in each. Like I have a vague idea who's in each group
yeah,
between the conferences. I still haven't memorized it, so I have to go back to a source online somewhere to try to figure out who's playing who's in the same group, who's coming up against each other in tiebreakers. That stuff doesn't easily come to mind. Just like point differential doesn't easily come to mind. There's a lot of digging that has to be done in order to try to figure this
yeah,
out. But if we do this, you eliminate that part of it too, because fans, even casual fans, okay, Southeast Division, you can probably just by using
and then
geography, you can figure out who's in
Pacific
the division.
Pacific is
Pacific,
all California and
yeah,
Phoenix,
exactly.
right?
It's a lot
So
easier and cleaner that way. So
yeah,
that's why this came to mind for me as another idea of something we can change for next year and beyond.
I think another benefit if you go to division and keep it a division, another benefit is you are strengthening rivalries.
Hmm.
Like,
That's a good
I
point.
mean, Boston, Philly, I think their fans would absolutely hate each other if they don't already.
Yeah. Hmm.
By year 2 or 3 of this.
Yep.
Lakers, Suns, their fan bases have something going. Lakers, Clippers, can you imagine? Like,
Oh, yeah.
that just it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of with that as well.
That's a really good point. The way you really kind of drive these intense relationships between teams, if they play each other enough times in a short span of
Mm.
time, just
Yeah,
like the Kings and the Warriors, they've played each other, I think 3 or 4 times. We haven't even hit December. They've played each other multiple times already. So you see each other enough times, something is bound to happen during one of the games. Somebody pushes somebody, there's physical contact, there's altercations. oh wow, we're playing each other a second time next week or whatever, or a third time in 3 weeks. You have those continued conversations. You build something. You build negative energy towards each other. It's just natural. If you play a team once a season, Lakers and Bucks, it's really hard to develop any kind of like bad feelings. So something
Yeah,
crazy happens, there's not really going to be a rivalry. But if we have that, oh, they played each other in the in-season tournament the last 2 years, and the Bucks, or let's say it's like the Kings won 1 year and then the Warriors won the next year. This is the tiebreaker. Like you're just going to just continue to elevate the level of competition there.
yeah,
So that's really definitely a good point.
yeah. And I think that just in terms of the groups, I think we're pretty much in agreement there. The one change I'm thinking of that I'm not sure it would be the right thing to do, but I feel like it would help at least give a little bit more time with this. Is I think it needs to be longer.
Yeah, that's
Like
something else I saw on Twitter. I saw that as
I
well.
think we need to go to January, and like I'm talking like the like New Year's, like not
Yeah.
anything past that.
Hmm.
Because if you go to January with it, then you have all the Vegas stuff like the week of the 7th or 8th, or like 6, 7, 8 of January instead of December.
Hmm.
Then you only have a month in between before All Star.
Yeah.
So it really is and it really is a mid season tournament in that sense because it will happen right at the 50% mark of the season. I think 50% mark is like maybe Martin Luther King Day in the
Mhm.
NBA.
Yep.
So I think that's what I would do. I think I would extend it just 3 or 4 more weeks and then have the Vegas stuff in January. I'm trying to think of reasons that would be bad, but I think it just it breaks up the regular season into even more segments, and I like that.
I do too. The only, I guess, concern I can see with that is the fact that college football has the national championship around that time.
I
That
don't
can be a
really,
little bit of
yeah,
competition because they have it like the New Year's Day. So I
yeah,
mean, maybe they can try to avoid that particular day. So maybe if there's New Year's Eve,
yeah,
like there's the semifinals, and then the finals is January 2nd or 3rd or whatever day is in the national championship.
yeah.
That could be something to look at as
Yeah,
far as
I was just thinking of extending it a full month. Like the championships can be December 9th in Vegas, right?
yes, I believe
So
so.
make the championship January 9th or something like that,
Yeah,
right? Like
that
just
could work.
literally extend it a month.
Yeah, that would be
So I mean,
perfect.
that's
And
just something I would do. I don't think they're
yeah,
going to do that. I think they'll a few years of this format is what I
mhm,
think we're looking at. I don't think they're going to just pull out all these wholesale changes right away, but
yeah,
just something I think, instead of I see the Lakers are 4-0, I think having 8 games. I think
yeah.
eight's a good
That's
number.
right.
And again,
That's
we're not adding games to the calendar. This is built in.
hmm.
So just make another chunk of the season mean a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
I'm definitely with that. That's another solid change that I think they will incorporate. Might take some time, but
yeah.
sooner or later we're going to see that. And that kind of brings us into the final question that I want to present here in this segment. Since we're talking about the end of the tournament, at the end of the tournament there is a payout. So for each player on the winning team, they're taking home 500K. Not bad, especially for the guys farther down the bench.
Yeah.
Let's say your season salary is 1.2 mil, 1 mil, 800K. 500K is a lot of money. So there's a lot of incentive, even for bench guys, middle rotation guys to win this tournament. Everybody really, but especially those
Mhm.
guys. From there, second place, 200K each for that second place team, the runner up. You lose in the semifinals, you get 100K. You lose in the quarterfinals, you get 50K. So for those 8 teams we talked about a little bit earlier, every player on the Lakers, Suns, Kings, Pelicans, Bucks, Knicks, Pacers, Celtics, everybody's going to get at least 50,000 from this point on. So that's a good payout. That's kind of like the default incentive for players in any level, in any sport, is money. You throw in some extra money, people are going to get motivated. They're going to give more effort. Uh, they're going to care more. It's definitely a good start for sure. Now that brings into question what else could the league do
Yeah.
to in further incentivize these players to really care about this. There was a lot of talk about this before the tournament started. There was talk about guaranteeing a playoff berth and guaranteeing a particular seed. I was against that. I feel like it's almost too much of an incentive because we're trying to really increase the value of the regular season.
Yeah.
But if you put in a prize that powerful in the in-season tournament, well, what's to keep teams motivated the rest of the way, even if
Yep.
it's not a guaranteed playoff berth, but something like that. I guess another idea I'd have kind of that's similar, but maybe not as impactful. Maybe it's a tiebreaker. It's an automatic tiebreaker. So let's say you and another team finished with the same record, and this is for the 10th seed. This is to get into the play-in. If you were to win the in-season tournament, you get an automatic tiebreak over that team. So you would be in the play-in, the other team would be out because you won the in-season tournament. Something like that, but more than that, and I think we're getting into dangerous territory in terms of keeping
Yeah.
between in-season tournament, regular season, respectively. But
It's way too gimmicky to add a playoff berth
yeah,
because, all right, how many games, like, let's just say, so the Lakers are 4-0. Let's say they win the in-season tournament. Is that 7 games they've played or 8?
4, 5, 6, 7. I think 7 games.
You can't have 8.5% of your regular season determine if you get a playoff berth. That's insane.
Exactly.
Like,
So,
that's stupid. You can't do that. I heard someone, maybe make it a tier system where, like, let's say, I don't know, let's say the Kings, or no, that's a bad example. Let's say the Jazz won the in-season tournament. I know they're eliminated, but let's just say they won the in-season tournament this year, right?
mhm.
But we know they're really not a playoff team.
Yeah,
And depending on
not really.
depending on where you are, like, let's say they finish, I don't know, 12th in the conference at the end of the year in April, right? But
Mhm.
if they won the in-season tournament, they get into the play-in. It ain't like you're guaranteeing them that playoff berth.
Yeah, it's
And
a
then,
chance at the playoffs.
yeah, and let's say for a team like Orlando, I don't know if you and personally, I don't think they're going to be in that top 6 at the end of the year. They could be, but let's
Mhm,
just say they finish 7th, right? They finish 7th.
mhm.
If they win the in-season tournament, it bumps them up to the next tier, which is at that 6.
Yeah,
So a
mhm.
tier system I can probably start to understand, but
Yeah, I can get with that.
no, yeah, you can't have a team like Memphis when like this year's Memphis, right?
Yeah,
Win the
yeah,
in-season tournament,
that would
and
just
then
throw everything into chaos.
no,
Just
you can't do that. So, but honestly, what I just laid out wouldn't be what I do. Um, I think, knowing how much money the NBA makes, and how much money they make, like, it's just absurd. I Maybe I'm in the wrong here. I just completely disagree with only having it 500K. Like,
they could probably throw a little bit more money.
I would triple it. I would quadruple that. Like, give each player $2 million and watch them care.
Mm.
Now they
Those
already
are big
care.
time.
They already care, right? They already,
Yeah,
like,
I
we
mean,
we just talked about them caring, right? But
mhm.
if you want to see some good basketball, $2 million every player, that'd be awesome. Like,
Yeah,
you would even have the stars. Like, oh my god, like even Tatum, or Jalen Brown, who makes 40 or 50, right? 60.
yeah.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I get another 2 million. Like, that'd be
Yeah,
cool.
because bare minimum, let's say like you're paying your income tax or something. Let's say your
Yeah,
taxes are a few mil,
yeah,
and then that
and
not
then
knocks out your income tax or whatever.
yeah,
That's a good little kind of balancing,
and
kind of a buffer.
you're not going to tell me that's too much money. I mean, it's a lot of money when
Yeah,
you consider every player, and I don't know if all the coaches get it too. I'm not sure, but
good
it's
question.
like it is a lot, but it's the NBA. They can do it.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they were to up the prize for, let's say, first and second place, and maybe even semifinals,
Hmm.
but you remove it from quarterfinals. Let's say
Yeah,
if you made the quarterfinals, you don't get anything. But if you make semis or championship, you get 500, a mil, 1.5, whatever it is. And it kind of escalates from there. That could work as well. So,
yeah,
you have these players like, you get into the quarterfinals. All right, you made a step in the right direction, but you have not you've not secured the bag yet. You got to make it another round to get there. That
yeah,
that could work as well.
yeah. I'm all about just upping the financial incentive. I wouldn't deal with the playoff stuff right now.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. Shane, as we wrap things up, man, this is going to be kind of like a rapid fire segment here to kind of close this out.
Hmm.
I want to make it real simple for each of us to give one team that has really exceeded our expectations this season, and then each of us can kind of throw out a team that's really underperformed relative to what we expected from them going into this season. So to start with the underperforming teams here, to really just kind of set the stage, there's some choices here for sure. I'll
Oh,
try to
there's some
avoid the
choices,
obvious
but
one.
I have a choice.
Yeah, I'll try to avoid the obvious one. Of course, we can get into what Memphis has done so far. I'm going to go in a little bit different direction here. Uh, Golden State is a team here that so far has definitely underperformed. When we did our predictions here on the show not too long ago, I think we both had them top five in the Western Conference. Um, I can't remember exactly where you had them at. I think I had them fourth.
I had them third.
Okay. So we were both top four then. We had them getting home court advantage here in the West. I understand this is not even halfway through the season. There's a lot of games left to be played. But at this point, it's hard not to at least be pessimistic that they will secure home court in the first round of
Yeah.
the playoffs. As of today, I believe they're the 11th seed in the Western Conference, barely above 500. Actually, I think they're below 500 as of today. So you just look at where they are in the standings, and yeah, 8 and 10 as of today. So you look at what Curry is doing. Okay, he's still an ageless wonder, close to 30 points per game, close to 50, 40, 90 splits, shooting wise. But Draymond's gotten into more trouble than ever. Clay is underperforming. He's not shooting the ball like he's used to. We're used to seeing from him in the past. He's not defending at the same level. He's slower on his feet. The young guns are not really supplying anything aside from Moody the other night, where he got pulled when he had the 2 threes against the Kings. That's a whole other problem. Um, Kuminga hasn't taken the steps forward we expected to see from him. It's just really a problem with their depth. Wiggins is a shell of himself. Just really troublesome times in Golden State. Blowing that lead against the Kings, 24 points, I think it was, letting the game slip away. Multitude of miscues. Just it's not even really the talent sometimes, it's the execution. And you would expect that to be better from a team that has multiple championships. So that's the team for me. I didn't have them finishing outside the play-in, that's for sure. I think they have enough to get there. But at this point, I don't know if they'll be able to get to where we had them finishing before the season started.
Oh, I'm with you. I had them in the West Finals. I thought they were, you know, the second best team for playoff equity behind Denver. Uh, when I see Gary Payton the second go down for a significant time,
Yeah, that's gonna
stick a
hurt.
fork in them. They're done. I mean,
Yeah.
they're. I just don't see unless Steph goes absolutely supernova, which is possible. Even then, I don't think their defense is good enough to kind of carry that.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, I'm optimistic Wiggins has something in store for the second half, or I say second half for the next 75% of the season. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I remember on our pod I mentioned Clay will have his legs back under him. He'll be faster. He'll be quicker. He'll be better. None of that's the case. So I'm worried about them.
Yeah.
My choice is the team right above them, the LA Clippers.
LA Clippers. It's another
It
good one.
is an unmitigated disaster. I know that they just beat the brakes off Sacramento. That like kind of goes into their whole thing this year of like they're so inconsistent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they perform well one night and then the other night they get beat by the Reggie Jackson Denver Nuggets, and where
Yeah, that
he's
was crazy.
completely just blowing everyone off the dribble, getting to the paint at will, making Harden look like a traffic cone out there on defense. Um, the most disappointing part about the Clippers, Aaron, is that they've played 17 games, 18 tonight, and Kawhi and PG have missed 0 games, and
Yeah,
they are the 10
but
seed.
still, yeah,
The
that's
most
not a good sign.
the healthiest season of the 2-1-3 era in Clippers for Kawhi and PG, and it's not turning out well. So I don't know, man. I think they just exhausted all their resources. Now there's no way to really upgrade their team. There's no way to get defenders in the door. Um, they lost their backup big, Mason Plumlee. I know they have Daniel Tice now, but it's a lot. And when you're relying on PJ Tucker in some games to play big minutes and contribute, in 2023, 2024, it's not going to be well. It's not going to be going well. So I think they're going to max out at about the 7 spot.
Yep.
And that's hard to swallow for a team that has no draft capital, team that is
None.
praying to God that Kawhi and PG will resign, because if they don't, they're going to be opened up into a dome with James Harden,
Yeah.
and who they also all 4 guys. And I don't even like to use the word star because only 2 of them are stars right now, not Harden and not Russ. But all 4 guys can be free agents in the summer. That's
Yep.
kind of insane. And now
That's really scary.
they could be opened up into a dome with Norman Powell.
Yeah.
So
That would be horrendous. And you have really no hope for the immediate future either. So it's kind of like a double whammy.
yeah,
But yeah, Shane, I mean, I'll say I was lower on them than you were going into the season. I had them, I want to say 7th or 8th in the
really,
West. I
okay.
did. Um, but for a different reason. I didn't think that it was going to be a problem with chemistry. I just figured that they wouldn't get enough games from their 2 stars
And that's been
to
the
jump
opposite.
into the next tier. And it's been the opposite. So I was right about their performance. I was wrong on the reason for their performance.
Yeah,
If you had told me that these guys would play every game to this point, I easily would have had them at least 5th, if not
yeah,
4th or 3rd, because of what those guys have done together. But they always play like less than some other parts. It's just been the theme
hmm
with this team. They've had the talent. They've had great coaches. You know, Tyrone Lue, you're hard pressed to find a better coach in the league. And the pieces just don't come together. Inconsistency, injury, lack of focus, lack of effort. Yeah, I think I'm with you. James Harden, I don't think was the right acquisition.
yeah.
A shell of
Uh,
himself, bad tendencies. It's just like you're not going to get very far with him. And we're not even talking about the playoffs.
yeah.
You've seen his playoff performances in his history. I mean, it's hard to be confident in a guy like that. It's left his team hanging dry many times.
It's not what they needed to do. They needed to just ride it out with Nick Batum, Robert Covington, and Marcus Morris wasn't playing at all. He was out of the rotation, but
Right.
Covington and Batum, they could really use those defenders now, I
And
think.
they've been really solid with the Sixers
Batum
so far.
starting.
Yeah, they've been
um,
great. So
it still goes along with what I said though, that the best point guard of the Kawhi and PG era is still Patrick Beverly. Like to me, it's
he's
still
fit.
Patrick Beverly. They've tried Pat Bev, Eric Bledsoe, Rajon Rondo, John Wall, Russell Westbrook, and now James Harden.
Yeah.
And that first year with Pat, like it's a guy they miss. I know Pat's over the hill now, but
Yeah.
it's they went the other direction instead of going like the defense first, like um just catch and shoot guy. They went with the traditional point, and it's
Mhm.
backfired.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at their defense right now, I mean, they're one of the better defenses in the league. I believe they're top
Yeah,
10 defensive rating right now. So I mean, they can do that, but you just don't get the consistency there. And that's really the problem for the
yeah,
Clippers. But real quick here to look at a couple of teams that have surprised in a good way for us. I'll go ahead and throw out the Magic. A lot of people have been talking about the Magic here recently. Top 3 defensive rating in the league. Jonathan Isaac has resurrected his career. Jalen Suggs is the next Marcus Smart. You look across the roster here, man. They're missing Fultz. They're missing Wendell Carter Jr. And they beat literally the Celtics and the Nuggets back-to-back games. There's something to say about that. Even if the Nuggets weren't healthy, there's something to say about that. That's very impressive. Uh, they've won 8 straight games. Uh, Paolo is taking another step forward. Franz Wagner is taking another step forward. Basically, Cole Anthony is a 6-man of the year candidate. They've gotten as much as you could possibly want from just about every player on that roster. Goga Batadze is going in there and blocking shots and being a great rim deterrent, great rebounder. Across the roster, they're getting A+ contributions, fantastic defense. The versatility is there, the length is there, the intensity is there. I watched the end of that Boston game the other day, and I mean they had the clamps on. I mean, even Tatum,
hmm
Jaylen Brown, they couldn't get anything easy. All they see is just long arms. They see a lot of hands in the passing lanes, a lot of great help, great recoveries. So, yeah, for the Magic, I mean, really great basketball. They have a plethora of guards. I think it's kind of like streamline the rotation, having Fultz out of there. So now it's like, hey, Fultz or Suggs go in there, get us some stops, be intense. Cole Anthony, go get us some buckets. Anthony Black, just go make the simple play, be a great defender,
hmm
soak up, learn the game. So I'm just super impressed across the board. I think I had them finishing, I want to say either, I kind of want to say right outside the play-in, honestly. I think maybe like
Yeah.
11 or so. So, I mean, the fact that they're near the top of the East, I mean, man, you got to give them a lot of credit. I'm with you. I don't think they'll finish quite that high when it's all said and done. But I mean, this is a playoff team. There's no doubt about that. This is a playoff
Yeah.
team. This is a team with a really bright future, and all they need is a little bit of extra punch as far as the shooting goes offensively. Jet Howard is still waiting in the wings, waiting his turn. So when he gets in there, that could address that. So I mean, they haven't made. They've hit a lot of draft picks, and they still have some guys that are waiting to come in and make their mark. So
Hmm.
there's a high potential for them to maintain what they've done so far uh, through however many games this season. They're through 18, 19 games. Really impressive stuff.
Yeah, they are plus 13 per 100 possessions with Goga Bitadze on the floor.
That didn't
So
see that coming. That wasn't on my bingo
it's
card
insane.
going into the season.
That's not, and good for Gary Harris too. Resurrecting the career there. I like
Yeah,
that because
love
I
that.
always thought that he was. I always thought he was like Jokic's best connection before Jamal really took
He
off.
was. He was.
Um, so I'm glad to see that. I think for me, the team I'll go with, it's tough because there's been a lot of teams that have kind of outperformed their expectations.
Hmm.
The easy one is Minnesota because we didn't see them being this elite, right?
Hmm.
Um, I'll say I don't think this will be the answer for everybody because I don't really think they're like gangbusters right now. But good for Dallas. Good for
Yeah,
Dallas to
still a good
still
choice.
win games, right? Even when Luca doesn't play well or even when Kyrie's out, like Grant Williams is a better addition than I kind of expected. He had games where I think he hit like 7 threes one night. Like he's had some good games. So good for Dallas to prove me wrong. I thought 38 wins was going to be where they are. Now, hey, things can still happen, but
No time left.
I think Luca just kind of reassured and reaffirmed that. Not I hate the one man offense term, but like he is probably one of the highest ceiling or floor raisers in the game because with
100%.
him on the court, dude, like there's not a lot you can do with him.
Hmm. Straight up, man. Straight up. That's well said for sure. I'm definitely with you on that. Um, just looking at what they've done so far. I mean, like you said, I mean, there's been some off Luca games, there's been some off Kyrie games, but I mean, the Grant Williams acquisition has been solid for them so
Eric
far.
Lively's been
Eric
good.
Lively,
He's been way better than a
oh
rookie
yeah,
center is supposed to
I
be.
thought he was really going to struggle out the gate, but he just gets it. It's just like, hey, set screens for Luca, roll hard,
Yeah.
get boards, block a few shots.
Yeah.
That's it. Just and he's done his job. He's done his job exactly the way you would want. So they finally have that connection at the five to kind of bridge the gap between him and Luca, Kyrie. Um, Interested to see what they do with Jalen there in Dallas. Kind of that like he's almost like the fourth guard at this point. So I'm not sure what his future kind of holds. I'm sure he wants a bigger role. With Tim Hardaway Jr. and Kyrie and Luca, there's not really a great pathway to minutes unless someone gets hurt. But yeah, you got to love the supporting pieces, and you got to love the fact that Kyrie and Luca are really developing and establishing a connection here, a real connection that should hopefully be sustainable because they're kind of like the Clippers in that they threw a lot of chips in and they need this to work.
Yeah.
Kyrie is you spent a lot to get Kyrie. You threw away a lot of your great role players. You're kind of walking on eggshells a little bit here. It's kind of you're treading lightly here.
Mm.
So you really need this to be a really good season, not to be a 10 seed or a 9th seed, but to really break in, at least be top 6. They really
Yeah.
need this to go well.
Kyrie is not Kyrie is not the option I would have traded my pieces for, but they did
Same.
it, and now it's about maximizing that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think they'll finish about fifth. I think
Yeah.
they'll be about fifth at the end of the day and have a good first round series against, let's say, Phoenix or Minnesota. One of these teams that I think will finish fourth or something like OKC.
Yeah.
Man, that would be so fun. Shea
Yeah.
and
That
Luca in
whole
the series
series.
would be fun.
Yeah.
So
Rooting for
yeah,
that.
I think they're a first. I think they're a first round exit. Dallas is, but
Me too.
for I had them outside of this whole thing. So kudos.
Yep. 100%, man. So I think that brings us about to the end of our conversation here. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, man.
What else can you say? But Shane, thanks again, man, for coming on. Always a great time. This season tournament talk was great. So did you want to plug anything for listeners here before you go?
No, nothing right now. I'm just kind of like waiting to see. I'm waiting to see what the next story's going to be. I might
Yeah,
do something on the Suns. I mean,
just trying to get to
hopefully,
Phoenix.
yeah. I mean, I made a running joke. It's like I'm going to get there before the big three play one game together.
You
It's like,
probably will
yeah,
eventually.
Brad Bill won't be back until mid-December. So,
Yeah.
um, but I kind of want to write a little bit. A lot has been written about Devin Booker, but I want to kind of write about the um, rotational pieces that they've kind of fill out the roster with, because this is a
Yeah.
lot deeper Suns team. So
They've been good.
just look for that in the future.
Cool. Sounds good. We'll keep it locked. If you want to follow Shane, Young MBAs, where you can find him on Twitter, posts all the stories there. A lot of great thoughts, a lot of great tweets. So definitely give him a follow. If you guys want to follow us, you can find us at notradeclause.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, all of our socials are on the screen. No trade_clause on Twitter. No Trade Clause, all one word on Instagram. That's where we post a lot of our content, a lot of great graphics, information for you guys to kind of keep up with what's going on in the NBA. Such as contracts, draft picks, all that good stuff. We hope to see you guys in the next installment of NTC. We'll be coming soon with that. But until then, enjoy some great basketball. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you soon.